the Podfather himself here. And I talked him through, Adam, we went through my expertise and all of my tips for how you can do a successful podcast. So I'm glad that I was here to help you out.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Allison.
Just a little bit of experience in this world. Okay, so I got to say, there was somebody on Twitter who was like, "Oh my God, you're going to have Adam Curry. I've always wanted to interview." Blah, blah. You have a huge fan base out there. And I am a new, somewhat of a new convert over to No Agenda, but I'm totally hooked now. I love the style of it. I guess I should share my screen here real fast so everybody can see it. And I think the vast majority of people watching are probably also addicted to your podcast. And I don't have to tell them a whole lot about it. But for like the two people who are kind of wondering about your transition, could you walk us through your early career and like the VJ stuff at MTV, your favorite maybe a couple of your favorite big interviews, and then we can get into podcasting. And then I wanted to play a quick clip because I found a very funny thing that applies to my current situation that you guys were critiquing, but I'm not going to take offense.
Do you want to play the clip first before I launch into my career?
We can do that. What would you prefer? Do you want to do that?
Yeah, sure. Let's warm up.
Okay. All right. Let me know if you can't hear this because I'm running my own show. It's just curious. How many people work on No Agenda?
Well, there's John and myself, and Eric, who does all of the back office stuff, which includes the accounting, a lot of what we call producer management. I'll talk about that in a bit, keeping us on the straight and narrow, and that's it.
That's it. That's not that many for as high quality of a production as you guys have going on, because you're very snappy with the sound bites.
Well, so here's the key. We don't actually have a fan base. We don't have listeners. We have producers. And we decided that really early on, like, in the first 10 or 20 shows, we said, there's no way that we can do the kind of show that we're on the track to do, because we do play about 40 to 50 clips of usually mainstream media, because all we pretend to do is deconstruct mainstream media or deconstruct media in general, since we both come from media. So, there's so much material to choose from, but it would be impossible for us to do everything. So our producers are expected to send us links, clips, information. Everyone's an expert at something. Strangely enough, everyone's an expert at something, and we want to hear from you. So we ask for only 3 things: time, talent, or treasure. Any one of those. And so we actually have more producers than any production I've ever worked on in my life.
It's really smart to mobilize like that, because otherwise, well, first off, you have the comments and the emails coming in anyway, right? So you might as well use them to your advantage, and not just let them be a cesspool dumpster fire. Like, you can actually say, hey, instead of it just, the people getting the attention are the ones that are just the chronic complainers or whatever else, you're like, hey, no, actually, we're going to use this to our advantage and say, help it. So that must be how we got connected, because one of your producers connected us.
That's exactly. This is another thing that they're very good at. That's how I ultimately connected with Joe Rogan. I mean, it was really the producers, and that's part of what the new media landscape is turning out to be, in my view. Is we have these tribes. I'll just call them tribes for lack of a more descriptive, a better descriptor. And so there's these tribes, and they surround a media property. No Agenda would be one. You have your tribe. These two are often the same people. They intersect, and they start to find other people who are in yet a third or fourth tribe. And before you know it, we have crossover of people listening or watching to all these different pieces. And I think the days of having Joe Rogan is probably the last exception. Of having like the Tonight Show of the universe. That's basically what he has, although it's a very different format, but the numbers are there. I think that we'll all kind of settle into this very comfortable size of audience that will support each property. And my experience is people who really go for this, what we call the value for value model, because we don't take any advertising or corporate money, but rely entirely on the audience to support the entire project, all production, including executive producers who usually pay for stuff. you get exactly what you deserve. It works out in a very odd way. And I don't think, not a lot of people have figured this out yet. You don't need the 20, 30 million person audience where you can be affecting a lot of change for 1,000 people who could probably support you.
Yeah. That's totally the journey that I think of awareness that I think I've been on over the last year. So I really appreciate your saying that. I heard you say not too long ago on one of your episodes of No Agenda that you get the government that you deserve, right? I think, is that something you say regularly?
Every country gets the government it deserves, of course. Yeah. Of course.
So it is kind of like you get the boss. Is that, I guess, would you translate that to you get the boss, you get the money you deserve? I mean, I don't know. I'm just curious, like, because you're saying basically we choose to set up our business in this particular way, and then we have the freedom to do A, B, or C. What's the lesson there, I guess, for those people who are, going into it, like, you have to start from the very beginning? Because I can see somebody like me who's just starting out. I leave corporate news. I want to go into independent stuff. There's a whole variety of paths that somebody could take. Do you feel like it's like really important at the very beginning to say, hey, I'm not going to take this kind of money. I'm not going to do this. I want, just curious. Because if you get what you deserve, just curious what you think about starting out and how people should frame that.
Well, my view is the value for value model is the way of the future. You and I both know, having done, worked in mainstream, that advertising is censorship. It's just the bottom line. Now, whether you're censoring yourself to not talk about a competing product or an entire field of discussion because that may not fit with an advertiser, and you often don't, when you're in mainstream, you don't even realize it until someone says, no, man, you can't talk about that. Oh, that's a problem. So advertising is always going to be censorship. What we have now with the tools at our disposal and the way we can organize around anything, an idea or a podcast or a media property, creating a value community is actually easier than ever. The problem is people have to get their pitch down. So in Silicon Valley, it was really Apple and Steve Jobs who decided that we're going to be the arbiters and the bosses of price discovery in creative works. So if you look at iTunes, they started off 99 cents a song. Now, does that take into account the creativity, the amount of work, all the stuff that went into creating one? And by the way, that was after they unbundled the album, which really destroyed the music business, because the way it used to work is you'd buy the album for $12 or $15, and you'd have all this extra music, even though you really were going for the one hit song you heard. So that destroyed the economies of it. But instead of, so if you ask me, what is I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles worth? $99 every time. And, I'd pay that gladly. It's one of the best love songs ever written. But no, that price discovery has been predetermined. And now that's carried over into apps. And so there's a lot of creativity that's not being fairly priced. And as it turns out, when you allow people, even beyond like a Patreon model of levels of giving, or say a subscription for $5 a month, when you say, why don't you just send me whatever you thought this was worth, whatever value you got out of the last hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, write it down. And I can I can help you out by saying, maybe you went to the movies last night, you spent 2 hours, you took a date, you had a drink and a popcorn, $50. Was the last 2 hours worth $50 to you? And that's it. And 90, well, in the beginning, 99, but now we're like 96, 97% will never send you anything. But the other 3 to 4%, you'd be amazed. When we first started doing it, we actually say, this $5 a week or month doesn't make any sense. Send whatever you want. We still got a lot of people sending $5, but quite a lot sent 50, and several sent 500. Well, the light bulb went off then. It's like, okay, so what do you value it at? So really the answer, the long-winded answer to your question is, you have to have an outstanding product right off the bat. If you don't have a good product, it's not going to work. You can flounder around all you want. And the majority of podcasts probably aren't outstanding products, not for a community of interest, not for anything. It's like when blogging started. Everyone was going to make millions of dollars blogging, and it's just not how it works. Most people podcast for fun.
Right. Well, and I mean, what is success? Success is relative to everybody's, success for me, which segues into what I wanted to play here, is the lifestyle that my husband and I want to live in. And hopefully we're not going to get divorced, but I'm going to play this real fast. So let me know if you can't hear it. Okay.
That guy in Idaho who's living on his land in an RV with his wife and kids is nuts.
He's going against the Airstream life now.
He says, even with the 2 Airstreams, me and Alex broke up every other week.
And that was purely because of the Airstreams.
No, it was because when you do, everyone I've known who've tried this project, they go move out onto some land, live with their wife and kids in a trailer, and build a house. They always get divorced. The house I'm living in
is proof of this theory.
Okay.
So now, that's what you're doing?
Well, hang on, because I'm not the savvy producer yet, so I have to switch my screen now so that I can show. Yeah, because I'm gonna just butt these up here, and you can tell me what you think. Because I don't know, maybe your next venture here is marriage counseling. So we'll just play this real fast. What is off-grid living, Lynn?
That's what we're starting with this Airstream. Is we're trying to simplify down to the Airstream. What's that you got on your head there?
Buck wild.
Our hope is to one day get our own property, put said Airstream on property, and then continue to save up and do what we're trying to do to have a simpler life.
So we bought this Airstream about 6 weeks ago. It's a 34-foot trailer, 1992 Airstream Classic.
The Excella model.
It's got a lot of the old original interior, which we're removing because we are going to gut it to redo the insulation and then put all kinds of new shiny objects inside.
But I'll stop for a shout out for my dog. She died a few months ago. All right. Sorry. So yeah, are we going to get divorced? What's going to happen, Adam? Please predict the future for us.
Well,
what
I think
we do to avoid this.
There's an interesting twist you've put onto the Airstream build a house lifestyle. Now, I was an Airstream fan, by the way. I had a 25-foot, I forget what model it was. I bought it new, one of the newer ones. I had a great time, although very disappointed by the quality they start to put in on these high-end Airstreams. So we got this from Dana Bernetti. Dana Bernetti is a very well-known Hollywood producer. He's also a producer of the No Agenda show. Now, what he did is he took 2 brand new Airstreams and put them next to each other. I think the fact that you renovated an older Airstream together first already put you into the perfect mindset for nest building. And this is like an accelerated timeline. And if you get through this, I presume you got through that portion okay.
We are 3 years in. And the first year we did all the gutting. Then I quit my career. We got pregnant. We moved twice. And it's still in the same condition. And we live in a place now, at least we have a garage. So in wintertime, we can actually work through the winter. But I have started calling people to see if we can get some help on it, which I will say, to your point, it teaches you, like, do you really want to do this? I mean, do you really want to build a house? Because this is a lot of work that I didn't really foresee us getting into. If you call someone now to help you renovate an Airstream, they're all at least 2 years booked out. So
I can't even get someone to come out for the dishwasher. I mean, we are in a complete and this is the world, by the way, but the United States, we're in a very interesting situation right now where lots of people are reevaluating their lives and going, hold on a second, I kind of like doing it this way, or why would I work at that crappy ass job anymore? There's people have expanded their horizons. So there's a shortage of so much. It's really quite astounding.
So, okay. Hey, back to your point about the governments that we deserve, because I want to switch over to COVID and what you guys are thinking about. I've really enjoyed your breakdowns of stuff. And I am also curious your journey from, kind of a music guy to talking about geopolitics. And maybe that was always an interest of yours. But you didn't necessarily start out at CNN. Maybe that was your saving grace. Is that, you know, you don't feel like I never went to journalism school. So I think in part I never really learned. I didn't learn the rules, so I never really knew that I was breaking it. And, you know, I wasn't a groupie, in other words, for like corporate news, because I just didn't. It just wasn't my background as a history major. I didn't really know what I was doing, honestly. But this guy, so Jason's like, bullshit. People don't deserve their mafia governments, tyrants with a monopoly on violence, with rule makers rigging their systems from the dawn of time. Would you like to respond to that, or you know, what you think if in fact, like, let's just talk United States. And we have now several cities that are like, you can't go in to eat dinner if you're not going to show proof of your medical history. It's probably going to become more common in other places. We have employers all over the country doing that kind of thing. So how did we tee ourselves up for this? What do we do to deserve it?
Well, how we respond to it is whether we deserve it or not. I'm not saying it's a fait accompli. We're not done. I believe that certainly in the United States right now, we are in a state of mass hypnosis, what some psychologists would call mass formation. And it really occurs when you are able to put people into a state of severe isolation, which creates what they call free-floating anxiety. So very, very fearful. This was our lockdowns, isolation, confusion, etc. You don't have to add much more. Certainly, if you have a path towards getting away from the pain, humans always want to run away from pain. And this, by the way, has been very traumatic, much more traumatic for most people than anyone realizes how traumatic this has been. So no one wants to go back to the pain of lockdowns, isolation, and not knowing what's happening. So the first thing we were given was masks. Oh, masks, great. This will solve everything. Then it was vaccine. And now, you know, that's turning out to be maybe not what we expect or what we were promised. There's a big difference between totalitarianism, which a lot of, like this commenter kind of alludes to, that we're under totalitarian rule. As I understand it from the psychological sciences, that the difference between mass hypnosis, as in our leaders are, you know, controlling us, is that these leaders that we have, our elected officials, they believe even more in this than the people do. They are completely all on board with such as Australia and New Zealand. Like, we can do it with zero. There can be zero cases, whatever that means. So they are, in fact, even more on board and more into the zone and have a much narrower field of focus. That they're just going. They don't even know how destructive the things are that they're doing. They cannot think straight anymore. And this is it's incredible to watch, because now we're learning, I think, the entire medical industry, which includes pharma, insurance. I mean, this is a fucked up system, and people only go by protocols and only go by what they're told to do. There is no more looking at the patient. I mean, everyone can see this. It's so bad now that, you know, and I think this is ultimately where some of this will lead, that there are the hospital staff, the medical staff is quitting. They're leaving for a number of reasons. First, they were all fired during these so-called hospital beds are overflowing. I think we're going to see the medical system collapse, or at least collapse in so far that there will be only one way to fix it. And this is where I think someone is using their brains. Universal healthcare. I mean, that's obviously what is going to happen with our medical system. It's completely hosed. And so, do we deserve this? Well, yeah. As long as the majority are in the state of hypnosis and can't break out and see the reality for what it is, yeah, we're going to keep getting what we deserve. And that's why Australia is such an amazing case study. And I did a documentary in Australia in 1990, and it was and what I'm seeing now is nothing like it at all. And people are just I mean, it's not entirely true because there's big protests, but in general, people are very compliant, and they're just going, okay, they've been locked down like dogs for 6 weeks now. That's insane.
Yeah. Well, Canada too feels like it seems like the places where the people are the nicest. Doesn't it feel like that to you? Like, people, you'd say, I generally think Canadians are very nice and compliant, and they're also the ones getting the most hosed.
Actually, I would say the we're being exploited in the United States on a number of levels, and just outside of COVID, and just look at Black Lives Matter Inc. and the division and racism that's being thrown about everywhere, accusations of. As Americans, and I'm going to be 57 this year, we grew up where you really didn't talk about religion and politics, and everyone just really got along. We accepted everybody. Hey, man, you're an immigrant from that country. I'm an immigrant from this country. We do our own thing. We have our own neighborhoods in the cities. But I'd love to come out, hang out in Chinatown. I love it when you come over to Little Italy. We can all figure out ways to work together. But we were civil. We were civil towards each other. There was this kind of unwritten barrier where you just wouldn't, say or do certain things in a community discourse, and that's been completely broken down and taken advantage of. So now, where we are always, as Americans, always of good spirit, good heart, good willing, very philanthropic. Now we've been told, well, you have to be extra philanthropic to the degree where you actually put yourself down. And that's hacked our systems in America, specifically in the United States. It's hacked our systems, and people have to come to terms with it, because it's something that I've never seen before. How crazy we've become with each other, although really only in an anonymous setting. So whenever it's online is where all of this takes place. In general, in real life, people still don't really talk to each other the way they do online. But we're getting close.
Yeah. So do you think that any of this could have happened without the internet?
Oh, no. The internet was a beautiful invention. This is what screwed it all up. It made propaganda easier. It made, obviously, some forms of censorship much easier. We still have tailbones, Allison. We weren't ready for this. We have no idea. I mean, this is so fast, so much. I grew up. The telephone had a cord to the wall, and the television had a wireless antenna. It's now flipped. So this is a very different world technologically. And boy, beware of what people are really thinking when you hear about that. So in general, without the internet, no. I think the admitted brain hacking that's been going on in Silicon Valley with algorithms and social media, and they know it, they admit it, that's what they've programmed for. That's really bad. I mean, the social networks, or at least social media, should at least come with a warning akin to tobacco.
What do you think we should do with our daughter and the internet? She's 1. What would you do with her? Would you give her a phone at a certain age? Would you just tell her? Because I don't want her to turn into a psychopath, but I'm also nervous she's going to go crazy. Like for a kid, that you raise with, they're never allowed to have sugar, and then they leave and they turn in, they go to 600 pounds because you never let them have any candy. So what should we do with that?
Well, I certainly wouldn't I have a daughter. I have 2 step. My daughter is now 30. And she was online very early because of me. So she was born in 1990. By 95, she was already doing stuff online. And now much, much later, she tells me about all the crazy things that were going on when she was 15, 16, and they had ICQ, remember ICQ Messenger, and the kinds of, it was already quite insane. You think, sexting is bad now. It's always been that way. And I'm a little shocked about how much, potential trouble she got herself into or out of. So that has probably changed my mind a little bit. But I think the most important thing is I would let any child do anything as long as it's the independent version of the internet. So when a child is old enough, say, you want to be on the internet? Okay, here's an old laptop. Here's a Linux install disk. First, install that. So just show me you understand how a computer works. And it's not that hard. Maybe set up your own email, or set up just a little web server, just some basic things, and do it all open source. And then I would say, now let's set up your own social network for you and your friends. And let's set up a Mastodon server. I would not let them get on any of the mainstream social media networks. I would also teach my children, and I would probably have to lock it down. But the way to do it is if you show that it's more effective, it's education, really. We get zero education on this. Parents are poorly educated. People barely know what kind of tracking is going on. So you have to educate and protect at the same time. But you can do everything you want without Silicon Valley, without any big tech.
But you know, I get nervous too. Like, I don't even know when it comes to education and stuff like this, especially like, let's talk medical. Even going to the pediatrician's office, sometimes I'm like, what did you just say? I mean, they want to. I won't even get into it. But both of my parents are MDs, and so. And you guys talk about this on your podcast too. And I'd love to hear, more what you think about the vaccines and all that other stuff. Of course, this is where YouTube's going to boot me off, get another suspension. But when we go to the pediatrician that's supposed to be the expert, and I'm like, that's not true. And then I show her the study and she goes, well, I don't have time to read those studies. And that's what I hear. So I'm like, well, wait. So, you're like, yeah, you're not educated. Well, I don't even know who would I go to be educated about this stuff? Because I have found, especially with my audience, and having had doctors who question the COVID narrative, they're getting people flying from other states to go see them because people don't trust their doctors anymore. I think we're in this age of like, people do not trust institutional, traditional authority anymore. And so it's hard to even know like something like what to do with your kid in the internet, what to do with your kid and any of these other things, what should we be doing with COVID treatments, COVID vaccines, all the stuff. It's so hard to know who to listen to. And there's so much information out there. I don't even know. I don't know. And I think the distrust of traditional authority is so thick that you're like listening for these cues. Like, does the doctor know about this person? Oh, okay. Well, maybe I can start listening to them because they're not repeating all of the brainwashing tactics. I don't know. How do you know who to listen to anymore?
Well, ultimately, I listen to myself. I listen to my own body, my own brain, and the loved ones around me. This breakdown in trust of institutions is everywhere. Well, first of all, just to go sticking with media for a second before I go to the medical environment or any other. I've been in the public eye since I was 19 internationally. I have yet to read a single interview in any magazine, newspaper of any stature that is completely right. It's always something wrong.
Yeah.
Everybody know, and this is why I say everyone's an expert in something. You'll read something in a newspaper, it's your field of expertise. It could be wood cutting classes, and you'll read something incorrect. So there's even a term for this. I can't remember what it is. Already there must be some doubt that whatever is being reported, it can't all be correct if the one thing you know about isn't 100% correct or actually could be blatantly wrong. Excuse me. This is happening everywhere. In the United States, and I think in the Western world, we're very used to having middlemen for everything. There's a problem, I'm going to call the cops. Hey, I'm angry with my lawyer, I'm going to call the cops. Or I'm angry with my neighbor, I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you. And I'm going to call a lawyer. We always have middlemen. We don't really know how to solve things or communicate directly anymore. And we've now seen that we weren't paying attention. And, who really wants to run for a school board? Isn't that just idiots? Well, gee. So now the school boards have been doing things in education that a lot of people don't agree with because we weren't paying attention. Politics. Why do we have, and I am far from an ageist, but even the 80-year-olds I know and cherish say, why do we have 80-year-olds running our country? They're all 80, from Fauci to Biden to Pelosi to Schumer. And it's time. And I think that the older they get and whatever their personal goals are, they may be getting more desperate. Or, you got to be very careful of that situation. And
what real fast, what do you think it says about that job that you can do it at that age? I remember, not that my grandparents or anything were like decrepit at 80 or whatever, but my grandma would fall asleep at like 9 a.m. She would get up at 6, she'd have breakfast, and I'd come out when I'm visiting her and she's snoring on the couch. What do you think it says about these jobs you can do it at 85? Well,
we have a lower limit, so we should probably have an upper limit. I don't think I know plenty of people of 80 who are just as on the ball as I am, but I'm saying when you have the majority of the top leaders, you've got to start asking some questions. I mean, the same goes for Biden and for Trump. Trump 2024, I really like the guy, but this is too old. We need younger people. And it doesn't really even matter. We have way too much focus on the general administration of the country, and we're now learning that, hey, local politics really matters, doesn't it now? And that's where people can make change. We are trained to focus on Washington and we even, why we call them leaders, we used to call them representatives. So there's a lot that's been going on, and the acceleration and all kinds of exposure to media, controlled media, has not been good for anybody.
So real fast, what is ITM and TYFYC? Because I'm getting a ton of these.
Okay, so like any long-lasting media property, we have our little vocabulary. ITM stands for in the morning. It's a greeting. It's how we identify each other. It's been going. It's from an old Family Guy episode of Weenie and the Butt. It's dumb, but that's what we use. And TYFYC is
thank you for your courage.
Thank you for your courage. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
I figured I knew it was thank you for something, and then I saw somebody say courage. So I still got it. Okay, let's go to media real fast, because what we talked about the internet's role and where we are today, and how you feel like, no, we wouldn't have gotten here without it. But what about corporate media? And back when, I don't know, where did the censorship start? Because I know it's not, I hear from people all the time, 200 years ago, it was just as bad. We complain about news now. It was terrible 200 years ago, 500 years ago, whatever. We've never had like the reality of a free press. But what do you think the changes have been that have made? Do you think they've gotten worse, better, whatever? And what do you think have been the most significant changes? What did you deal with, I guess, censorship wise, in your early career, and what do you see change since then?
Well, let me go back and let me answer an earlier question. I grew up in a government and military environment family. So everyone in my family either works for an agency of some sort or military, highly educated. And I was the kid who was tinkering around with wires and building transmitters, and kind of fell into the broadcasting part alongside of that. But as you grow up and you come to understand how certain things work, particularly how the government is deeply, deeply embedded in all forms of mainstream media. People can go back and look at the Church Commission when it was admitted that CIA had reporters on the payroll, were writing stories, were all the way up there with the CBS Evening News. That never went away. I mean, there's still thousands of people inside intelligence organizations who write articles. And the circular reporting, the way it works is, well, according to the Uganda Times, this and this is taking place. That's what the New York Times can write to cover for the fact that they're actually reporting on a CIA or State Department manufactured story. So I've been around this all my life. My uncle, Don Gregg, was a national security advisor to Bush Sr. He then was very, very high in the high level in the CIA. He was ambassador to Korea, and for me, really, the aha moment came in 2008. I was living in the UK. Two things were happening. One, the Lisbon Treaty was being put into place, which was supposed to be the European Union's constitution. And France and the Netherlands and Ireland kept voting it down. And then they just said, well, no, it's no good. And these were like referendum. We're going to do a recount because you voted wrong. And so they just kept voting until they got the answer they wanted. And then you look at it, and the people were being sold on television and in newspapers. The European Union's going to be great because we'll have the same money and you won't need a passport. And all of that is exactly what's messed them up. Now the borders are a problem. UK left for Brexit. The European Central Bank is shambles. It's worse than our own Federal Reserve. And then the second thing was a book came out called Legacy of Ashes by Tim Weiner from the New York Times. It was about the CIA. And my uncle was in that several times. I called him up. And I said, Don, is this true? And he says, yeah, that's pretty much how I remember it. So false flags, overthrowing governments, throwing fluoride in water of enemy camps to make them docile. All this shit is real and it's happening, and the media is not independent of it. They are completely tied in.
Yeah. But you think that most people in the media know that they are? Because
No.
I will say, I remember before I woke up, I mean, I was probably repeating all kinds of government propaganda, without even realizing it. I think the system itself keeps you kind of enslaved intellectually, because at least in news, you got like 3 hours to get your stuff together. And if you're covering anything complex, it's not just like somebody got shot down the street. You're basically screwed because you don't have time to read documents. You don't have time to make phone calls. Whoever calls you back within a half an hour is the one that ends up on the news. Doesn't matter if what they're saying is helpful or is complete bullshit. They called you back, so they're getting on. So I think, eventually when you get sick of the system, you just can't stay anymore and you leave, which is, I think, what happened in my case. But I think the vast majority of the people I know, like, either they're totally unaware or they have a very hubristic moral crusader aspect to like what they're doing. They know they are a gatekeeper, but they like it. They like the idea that they have a stranglehold on what's going on. Though I would say that they would deny that they're holding on to information that challenges the government, because they still see themselves, I think, as, challenging the power structure.
Yeah. I don't think it's really malicious, even at the editorial level. I think they just believe that they are an important piece of a machine, and this is how they've been trained into it. I mean, I haven't really paid attention, nor have most of my age group, to what's being taught in schools and what universities are teaching and what they're teaching in J school. And it seems like everyone's trained to fit into a certain way of doing things in a certain system. And I think we're in a minority. But at a certain point, once you can get past the economic problem, which is, hey, if I speak up, I could get fired, which either requires an alternate plan or balls, you're never going to get out of it. And it's very comfortable. You can float along in the mainstream, whether it's news or entertainment. You just do it. Hey, all you got to remember is when you see somebody, say, hey, man, big fan, love your work. That's all you got to do, and you're going to be fine in this industry. And it's been working like that for 50 years, Allison. That's what the movies, music, it's the music business. What a joke. I mean, what a joke. We have literally created a whole industry of music and outlets, including music videos and radio. I mean, if I said to you, hey, I know you own a couple radio stations. I have a whole library, never ending, of people killing dogs. It's all the songs about people killing dogs, and you're going to love this. You're going to be, no, I don't want to play that. But when it's an entire library of people talking about ganging and shooting other people, mainly black men, this is great. We need more of this. This is insane what's happened. This is not healthy.
Can you talk a little bit about ESGs? Because when you were on Rogan, you brought that up and it made a lot of sense to me, but I'd never really heard of it. But one quick question. I don't know. I don't think it's me because I have a full signal, but I know you live out kind of in the hill country of Texas too. So, we're not in Texas.
Yeah, you know what?
Maybe someday soon.
Actually,
is there anything going on with your Wi-Fi or your mic? Because it's popping a little bit.
No, what's happening is I think my browser is getting tired of this. If you give me a second, I'll pop right back in.
It's okay.
I think I gotta start this.
No worries.
Right. I'll be back.
Wi-Fi people are, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I'm on a list. So I have this problem quite a bit. Now I would blame it on living in the middle of nowhere, but I actually do have a full signal right now. So I don't think that's what's going on here. Oh, bye, Adam. Sorry, guys, you're left with me until he comes back. Rebooting. I'll go through some of the I'm gonna get to the ROKFIN comments too, guys. So just hopefully we'll we'll get Adam back. Audio is not Adam's thing, actually, but he's like a specialist in audio, right? I don't think it's my connection. We actually have a full internet going right now. Oh, I know. Sorry, y'all. Adam, I'm a big fan and love your work for over 30 years. Do you guys think that maybe this is how people get out of like the rest of the interview on my channel? They just fake like audio issues or something, and then they go. Oh, nah, it's fine. It's not so bad that the message is being lost. Okay. I'm hoping he was just rebooting his computer, so hopefully we'll be back. CIA jamming stream confirmed. When it's like Ryan Christian, I actually wouldn't be surprised. Or like Jason Burmis. Who was it the other day that Michael Yon. He has issues. Whenever I have him on, he has issues. Unless I send him, I have to send him the link via WhatsApp. And if it's encrypted, then it's fine. You figure that one out for me. I'm not using Zoom. I'm using StreamYard. I'm hoping he'll come back. Thank you. So, any other questions that people have? I'm gonna go over to ROKFIN real fast and see what else we got here. Allison, this is Bangs. I run podcasting. Any thoughts on the balkanization of podcasts from RSS to various walled gardens like ROKFIN, Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, and paid subscriptions behind Apple Podcasts and Patreon? As a listener, it gets exhausting following disparate platforms. Even if publishing can be automated, this seems a problem. I can ask Adam as soon as I see him back on. Hopefully he will come back on. But my thought on all of this is that I hope at some point, well, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't hope for this because maybe it'll end up being problematic long term, is that some of these options will work together and we won't have a gazillion anymore. But oh, look, he's back, so he can answer the question himself. I was stretching, as they say in the biz.
All right, so where was I? I missed it. What did you say about me?
I know. Somebody was asking about what you think of the balkanization of podcasts from RSS to various walled gardens like ROKFIN, Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, and paid subscriptions, and then it gets exhausting going to different platforms. Now, you don't do video, so I'm curious if that makes a difference. If audio is less censored than video, right? Because you just do audio, don't you?
Yes, but that's not the issue. The issue is something different.
And what do you think about that? Like, I'm on a gazillion platforms, and I understand people get annoyed because they're just like, well, you do this video there, and you do this, and I'm sick of having to figure out where to go, and I don't know what the solution is. I don't have any answer to that.
Well, so 18 years ago, Dave Weiner and I birthed podcasting. Some say invented, created. And there's been a very slow build since then. It was always kind of focused on RSS and audio. When Apple decided to put podcasting into iTunes, which made a lot of sense for them because they had the iPod, and that was, if anything, that was my big aha moment. As I saw an iPod and said, "Oh no, that's not a jukebox. That's a radio. We just have to wire it up differently." So when that was put in, and I met with Steve Jobs at that time, and I made an error, not in so much that I gave Apple the very first directory. We had a directory with about 5,000 or 6,000 podcasts at that time, but I never considered what the implications would be of Apple being the default directory. Because it really wasn't all that important. You were finding podcasts on blogs, and remember we had to subscribe, like, right-click on the little RSS icon and then hit add feed. And it was a shit show. So Apple, without making any money on it and really being good stewards, while it was still advantageous to them to sell iPods and the burgeoning iPhone market, they never really cared about podcasting because you can't really make money off of podcasting. It is decentralized by its nature. So anybody with a web server of any kind, anywhere, an MP3 file and a text file can create a podcast. what happened with Apple is that became kind of the de facto on-ramp. Oh, you want to be in podcasting? You got to register with Apple, because everyone was, kind of leeching off Apple's database. And I saw this as this was my era. It's like, oh, holy crap, this great decentralized system is really centralized, because if Apple decides they don't want your podcast in there, or if they decide they don't like podcasting anymore, then a lot of stuff's going to break. So when Spotify came in, and with the belief that they could capture podcasting, which they will need $1 billion to do that, not $100 million or $200 million. They will need several $1 billion. I don't think it can be done because of the nature of it is in its DNA. RSS by itself is decentralized. When they did that, and they have their own, advertising that they think is going to work, but that doesn't seem to be working yet, as far as or at least converting music listeners over to podcasting, which is part of what they promised investors. Apple lost interest. And Apple said, well, we can't make any money off of, we're not interested in selling ads. We're not interested in doing much with podcasting. So we'll just convert it over here and give you a private place, and you can do subscriptions, and we'll take 30%. And they literally drop podcasting overnight. It takes sometimes 2 to 3 days for a podcast to update on the Apple Podcast app. So they've given up. People have left. But I saw this coming over a year ago and said, hey, we need to protect, we need to preserve, and we need to extend podcasting. And for the very same reason that Apple was the kind of the de facto index, there'd be no end of innovation. We had no innovation in features or any of that. So Dave Jones and I, and later we brought in Eric, the same Eric from the No Agenda show, we decided to create podcastindex.org, which by itself is just the database of all the podcasts. We don't care what it's in, what it's about. It's all there. And we allow software developers to make apps free of charge, do what you want. And that has created a whole new universe of new apps that get updates very quickly, like 40 seconds after publishing, that have transcripts and chapters and locations and seasons. And most importantly, the second part of the mission, non-interruptible money. So it's one thing for your podcast not to be able to be taken down. It's another, as you know, there's all kinds of announcements about PayPal. They're bringing in the Anti-Defamation League with a partnership to cancel money. So this is where Patreon and all kinds of PayPal, they're going to come after that too. And we can get, and this kind of leads back to the ESG part. I just want to point out that we've created that. It's called value for value streaming payments, and you can literally send little micro payments in real time. And this has become quite the thing. You can read all about it at podcastindex.org. What's happening with how this ties into ESG, which stands for economic, social governance for mainly publicly listed companies, corporations. This is an attack on the free markets. And the way it works is we're going to assign a new scale, kind of like Moody's does a rating. You're rated A++, AA, or B- for a bond. Mm-hmm. So the ESG rates you based upon your economic and social governance. So have you talked enough about how you're going to do things to combat climate change? Have you donated to Black Lives Matter, Inc.? These are all things that get you points, and these points are made up by a nonprofit, which literally are the same people who invented the whole idea in the first place. So,
the fact checkers, like all the fact checkers.
It's very similar to fact checkers. So, except now it's for corporations, and it's gotten to the point where big investment companies, and of course this is driven by BlackRock, Vanguard. These are huge funds who have money in almost everything, and they literally say, you're not woke enough, so we're not going to invest in you. And what this creates is this society where literally corporations are incentivized to talk bad about America or about certain people in America, or deny other opinions for more investment, which, obviously means ultimately stock price goes up. Executives are the first ones to benefit from that. And I think if you look in a weird kind of way, so we have, let's just call them social justice warriors, but really it's leftist thinking. They are strange bedfellows with the corporations. They really don't like each other, but oh, wait a minute, you're gonna talk bad about white America and give money to Black Lives Matter Inc. Oh, that kind of fits my agenda. So while this is taking place, I think other entities like perhaps the Chinese Communist Party look at us and go, oh, how can we fuel this? How can we make this even worse? Because they can't defeat us any other way than if we defeat ourselves.
How new is this though? Because it just seemed like last summer, for instance, it really exploded. You turn on Amazon Prime, or your Amazon TV, Netflix or whatever, and they all had those messages that, they're supporting all this, whatever. It just felt like everybody was doing it at the same time, which if you're paying attention, you got to sit back and ask yourself, why are they all doing this? Because that they don't, at least I don't want to say they know, but my guess is that it was money driven, like what, if you really cared about it, where were you 5 years ago? It just seemed odd, right? The timing seemed odd. So are ESGs are they gaining more influence, more power? Like why now? And, and why did it all seem to be so, like unilateral, like it was like everybody was doing it at the same time?
Because the investment community said it was important. And who is that? That is literally the CEO of Vanguard and the CEO
Which is where
of BlackRock.
My 401k from my old newsroom is, Vanguard.
Of course. If you want to put money in, if you're going to put it in a public market, if you want to play with cuck bucks, then put it in Vanguard. That's what all the politicians are in. Everyone's in that. And, and Vanguard and BlackRock are pretty much, they're very intertwined. So they did this. They did this to have total control. But the idiots, the stupid idiots is us. I am now consciously divesting myself of any company that does this. I'm not going to drink Coca-Cola
without getting taxed majorly.
No. I say I'm not going to shop at Amazon. I'm really trying to cut that down. I'm not drinking Coca-Cola. Never really did. I am leaving Chase Bank. I have an account there. I refuse to go on. I'm sorry?
How do you do banking? What's your preferred method?
The full noted Bitcoin. But so I like keeping my money there. If I want some fiat fund coupons, then I can just get it off to the bank. But I use small community banks or credit unions. Do not use these horrible corporations.
Okay, I'm switching.
But I personally prefer to have the majority of our funds in Bitcoin. That's where I think it's safe, and we have our own node, and so we are our own bank in that case. Freedom has a little bit more steps, a few more steps and responsibility, but we have to reject. So with the No Agenda Show, we are not on a mainstream hosting platform. We use Mastodon server, which again, our producers set up and are running, or really one, Aaroner. And we federate with other, so we have our own social media net. We really don't need all these other things. All the tools that we want are there. We have our own operating systems for our phones. We're all loading Graphene OS, which at least remove some of the, I am trying to get my show off of Windows. This is in the studio, and I still need Windows to run a couple pieces of gear. And you see, of course, what we had is like it melts down. I want all of these corporations out of my life. You don't need them anymore. We are the fools, and you need to buy local, and you need to support whatever you can. If you don't, well, again, we're the idiots. It's our own fault.
I agree with all that. My big question though is it feels like it's easier, though maybe not completely insurmountable, for a newer person getting into it to do all of that stuff. What do you think about the person who's like, okay, I'm 21, I'm graduating from college, and I want to follow this path? Do you just move to the middle of nowhere and start? That's kind of what we decided to do, because we're not at the level, I guess, of the technology savvy that you are. But we decided, hey, instead of Bitcoin, we're bartering. So, we live out in the middle of nowhere, and we buy straight from ranchers, and
that's very valid. But there's a difference between being a prepper being an escapee, and being aware of what the hell you're doing. So this comes back to
Do you think I'm a prepper?
I'm sorry?
Do you think I qualify as prepper?
No. Do you have a ham radio license?
No.
Oh, girl, you're nowhere near.
Okay.
You got to have a ham radio license.
My husband may,
Alpha
but
Charlie,
I don't.
Charlie, 73s to you. Yeah, no, you're not a real prepper unless you have an AR-15 and a ham radio license.
We have one of those.
Okay,
Lynn, do
good.
we have a ham radio license?
Get one. It's very easy.
Okay, he said yes. We do have a ham radio license.
Very good.
And we definitely have an AR-15.
It's a version of the same thing. You get the government you deserve.
I was a comm guy in the military.
He says it's not fair because he was a comm guy in the military. So
Yeah, well, that's the best kind of prepper. Ex-mil guys, of course. They know how to dig the latrine. Anyway, we need to be conscious of who we're doing business with. A younger generation, 21, so that's Zoomers, they've given up on privacy. They've given up on understanding. They've just taken it for granted. And, as they get older, I see it with my own girls, my stepdaughters, they start to kind of go like, wait a minute, something's not right here. It's all purely education. And if you don't like what Chase Bank is doing, you must leave Chase Bank, and you must encourage other people to leave Chase Bank. And there are alternatives for pretty much everything in life. Can you completely get away from it? No. But should we give up? No, of course not. And that's the same with how we vote. There's a lot of discontent over the system, and is it fair? And we seem to be more interested in pointing fingers at other political parties than just getting some basic information what really happened. That's probably too much of a quagmire, but the things you can personally do is move away from corporations that are doing things that you don't feel are in your best interest or in that of the country that you live in. And anyone who says, yeah, well, but, I really like my Diet Coke. Well, screw you. You're going to get what you deserve.
It was interesting to me to see over this last year, having a lot of my friends who are still in corporate news talk about going through, I guess it would be critical race theory training. I'm not really sure that's the terminology they're using, but they're all going through classes now to talk about equity or whatever else. And I'm curious, okay, so that's one sector of ideology specifically, but if you start training journalists on how to think through a particular issue as the right way to think through it, so you could extend that to anything, like we said, climate change you were talking about, or any other value. Is that something that you saw happening at the beginning of your career? Like, we're going to get all the journalists together for 3 days of Zoom meetings on how to appropriately think through this topic? Because it may have been something that was unsaid in my newsrooms, like that you just don't go there, but it wasn't something you're overtly training people for, like where you're bringing in folks who are extremely, people who are debated public figures with the public, and you're bringing them in as the expert for your journalists, right? So you're basically saying, whether you say it out loud or not, that if you question this person, which the public is questioning, people are having you're the people you're covering, they're having debates about this person, but you're not allowed to do it. Otherwise, you're going to HR.
Well, I think the whole concept of news is an anachronism. It doesn't make sense. It hasn't made sense since the network was open, and by that I mean anyone can now broadcast, anyone can receive. You do it through big tech platforms. You can do it directly on smaller just technology. The idea of training a journalist how to present information is more of the same. That's why you get the New York Times article that gets 5 things wrong about the exact topic they just interviewed you about.
Right.
What works, and I think in a way we're doing a postmodern performance piece, really with no agenda, certainly, is we have the experts. You want to know what's going on really happening with the airlines, why the delays are taking place? I have 5 747 captains. I've got flight attendants. I've got engineers. And and guess what? People don't want to work. They're not coming back. Their scheduling systems, particularly Spirit Airlines, are antiquated pieces of crap, and they're just not telling you the truth. So
why don't they want to come back to work?
I'm sorry?
Why don't they want to come back to work?
Well, in the airlines, there's a whole host of issues, but the big secret is that during the lockdown, a lot of companies let a lot of people go, particularly in big service sector, except for the things that literally stayed open, like fast food and Walmart, etc. So everyone else is reevaluating their life. They're like, why wouldn't I be like Allison? I can remodel an Airstream and go out and do something else, get a piece of land,
Get divorced.
Look, I can't speak on that because I'm now my third and final marriage, so I can't really. I'm an expert, but it's not the field I think I should be talking about. So the whole idea of news and a trusted source and an authority figure is falling apart. We no longer trust them. We have maniacal authority figures who represent the science that you should follow and believe in, even when it changes overnight. Just follow it. And this is the terms they're using. So you have Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is, this is the most confusing, polarizing individual who I've ever seen in medicine. And contradictory information and complete way too much exposure, and people just they don't, they're giving up on it. So who do they go to? They go to the local doctor they trust, the doctor they've known, if they're lucky enough to have one anymore. We are so removed from basic life of 2 decades ago. You're seeing a lot of the results of these choices, but it's not irreversible by any means. We just have to back off a little bit and stop trusting. I mean, holy crap. Believe me, the people who are in charge are just as afraid as we are. But they're hyper-focused and they're maniacal just because they're in a psychotic episode of pain avoidance. It's crazy.
Somebody, I don't know if have you heard, I think this is a Steve Deese thing, Branch Covidians.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it does really, it feels like a religion. Journalism feels like a religion more than I ever experienced it at the beginning of my career. I had Matt Taibbi on. Are you familiar with him? Independent journalist.
Of course, the only guy who would write about the financial shenanigans of Wall Street, and of course, it was a guy from Rolling Stone. I mean, no one else reported on it like Matt Taibbi. He is a hero of mine.
Well, I was talking to him about this. Well, I think I called it the journalism or the death of journalism by moral dissociation, because it went from like 15 years ago that I thought we were like supposed to go after the people who were hard to understand, the outsiders, the crazy people. Like that was what a journalist did, because if you were talking to the popular people or the folks who were sort of just pushing whatever popular narrative was going on, that was just marketing, that wasn't journalism. So it was just like you were excited to get that person. Now it's like, no. You got to silence that person if you're a real journalist. You can't let disinformation on your platform. There's all kinds of virtue about dissociating from somebody that is uncomfortable.
But I got to stop you there. Let me just take you back to the reason for deplatforming, where this started from. And I'll do it with YouTube. That's easy because you're familiar with the rules and the regulations. When YouTube started, by the way, it severely suppressed podcasting's growth. It was kind of the 2008, the big purchase, the $2 billion for YouTube, free. You don't have to pay for anything. Videos, streaming, all this stuff was unheard of. We couldn't compete in podcasting, which is why audio kept going in podcasting. But YouTube came in, and Google, the new owners, did not give a crap. You could put aliens are coming out of my butt and they're gonna kill all the Indian people, whatever you wanted. It did not matter until the advertisers said, I really don't want my content, my advertising anywhere near that content. And this story was told by the former chief revenue officer of Google Search, who started Neeva, the new search engine, neeva.com, which you pay for. Mm-hmm. He said it became really uncomfortable because advertisers did not want to advertise if that content popped up. So that's when demonetization came in. It wasn't to punish you by taking your money away. It was to make sure that no ads ran next to your content. And then we got the leverage. This is what the social networks did. We got Sleeping Giants and Media Matters and all these groups who use that against someone they don't like. Because, algorithms, they can detect stuff, but the reason you get taken down or demonetized on YouTube is because someone reported you. And now that we run an index, we see these reports all day. And it's mass emails, it's form letters. This person's transphobic, uses the D word, the F word, the G word, the S word, and it keeps going. Please take him down. Anyone who has economic gain from advertising will say, that's it, take it off right away. I don't care. We can't have this because that's our core business. And that is now being leveraged for politics, for mainly politics, all kinds of reasons. So the censorship is in fact coming because of advertising. And it's just being used as a tool because if you haven't noticed, look at how much money they make on advertising. They don't want to lose that. Not a penny. It's all about money.
So how does it trickle down from maybe the people at the top who are doing it for that reason to then the journalists thinking they're doing it for virtuous reasons? Because the journalists aren't sitting there saying, I better not talk to that person, or the advertisers are going to get pissed.
But what is the job of a journalist? What is the job of a journalist? What is that job?
I don't even know if I know anymore.
What is that? I think Joe Rogan is a great journalist. First of all, if you take journalists at its face value, that's the same as being a blogger, someone who journals. So journalist is a blogger, as far as I'm concerned. You have reporters who have very specialized local beats that they can talk about because they're experts in that. City desk guys, I think, are probably still kind of in that area. And everything else is just people who are well trained at collecting information, comparing it, fact checking, doing source checking, and then reporting a story. Shit, Allison, you can do that. I can do that. My daughters can do that. Everybody's good at that now. It may be a different opinion than someone else comes up with, but we don't need journalists to tell us what's right or wrong anymore. We can do that ourselves. And when you have, I would say we're kind of the information routers. So I started another show over a year ago called Mo Facts with Adam Curry. And so what this is a guy who lives in Virginia. He's got 4 kids, wife. He works at a computer manufacturing or the chip manufacturing, has an interesting job, has a team of 10, but he's Black American. And he says, Adam, you and I think the same, but we need to be able to have this conversation out in the open. He's never done a podcast. We started doing a podcast. He brought his clips and he started schooling me on the differences in our culture, which also gave me the opportunity to school him, because often we've been in the same situation, same scenario, and our parents were telling us two different things without us knowing what our parents were doing. And what turns out is that 2 American men, he's 40, as I said, be 57 this year. All we want, we are exactly the same. We have different cultures, and we love that. I can't wait to have dinner at Mo's place and have whatever he's feeding his family and vice versa. But we're still really cool with not being equal the same on all levels and everything, but we treat each other with respect and we have open dialogue. This is something that you cannot hear this anywhere, only because we're completely independent and have no other way for anyone to interrupt us. Does it happen? And sometimes it's uncomfortable for both of us. It like really deep stuff, especially men. We don't really get into our feelings about topics, so it's beyond the superficial layer, and it's mind-boggling how wrong everything is in the race discussion. I mean, just the fact that for instance, why are Black Americans, African American? He doesn't even like that. He said, "Why am I even a color?" He said, "Why black is a brand? It's a color. I don't want to be that." But okay, we have to describe it somehow in this conversation. Why are they vaccine hesitant? You wouldn't know it, but only 36% of African Americans have been vaccinated. And what always pops up is, the Tuskegee experiment. And you know what it is? Black men don't trust doctors. They don't go. They don't trust it. They keep what they call their numbers in order, which is high diabetes and blood pressure, which is prevalent amongst Black men, mainly poor Black men. It's not the color of their skin, it's their situation. So they eat shit, drink shit, you get high blood pressure. they don't trust the doctor because as they say to me, the only thing the doctor can deliver, and Black America comes from a very different spiritual and healing place than white America. The only thing the doctor gives me is a pill or a knife. He said, I'm not going to go for that. It's a pill or a knife, and whatever they do, I get 10 other things. This is the general consensus. Whether that's happening in reality, I can't say, but this is what's going on. So it's lies. And then what do we get? It's Republican red states who aren't vaccinating. No. So we journalists have no place in society anymore because they're really a gatekeeper without even knowing it. They're not even, sources need to go direct.
Well, and it reminds me of, I think the doctors or medical care is like the third leading cause of death in America. I believe
Yes.
that
You
fact check
have
me
more
on that
chance
one.
of dying in the hospital just by being there. Sure.
Yeah, so it seems kind of smart. On that note, I actually have a doctor's appointment to do hydrotherapy. Have you ever heard of that before?
Sounds like something with water.
Yes, I'm going to find out at 10. So I got to run soon, and I appreciate your taking all this time. Adam, is there anything that is just like burning that you've never said before that you want to say for the first time here on my channel? Anything, any deep dark secrets, this is what happened when I was talking to Michael Jackson, which by the way, when I had to have surgery last week, and to make me feel better, they told me the drug they were giving me was what killed Michael Jackson. I'm not really sure how that was supposed to help.
Propofol.
Yeah.
Well, Michael Jackson was killed, in my opinion.
You think he was murdered?
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Why why so?
Money. He owned all the Beatles catalog. He owned all his own music. This was a huge a problem for the music industry. He was waking people up. One of the last songs he did is if you listen to that whole album, was it What Are We Going to Do About Us? He had a lot of anti-globalist New World Order fighting type really stuff.
Deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen situations in earlier Michael Jackson, 80s Michael Jackson, where he was just abused by record company executives, like in the limo, going to different radio stations. I've got to go to the bathroom. Shut up. You'll go when we get to the next station. I've seen this with my own eyes. Of course. But this is why I didn't fit very well. I think from day one, people saw we can't heal this kid. That's not going to be any good. But yeah, the entertainment business is like that. And what's happening with Instagram influencers is these little microcosms of, the child star. It doesn't have to be a child, but you get super successful really fast. Then you screw it up. You got to do 5,000 apology videos. You're tamped down into the ground. You can make your comeback a little bit later. Entertainment is a nasty business. And to answer your question, about hydro, I've been going to a voodoo doctor for over 10 years. If I break my leg or I have a heart valve or something like that, mainstream medicine, very good at that. They're great mechanics. They can do all kinds of super stuff. But ever since I studied what Anthony Fauci and Deborah Birx were doing in the 80s and 90s with AIDS, I was there. I lost friends. I have no confidence in these people or in this system or in what they call a remedy or solution.
What is a voodoo doctor?
Applied kinesiology.
Oh, so, okay.
Have you ever done it?
Oh yeah, I know what kinesiology is. Yeah. And I'm curious, going back to Michael Jackson real fast, is your theory that somebody hired the doctor or influenced the doctor that was caring for him? And who do you think would be the number one, whether it's a corporation or a politician, or who's like the top list that didn't want Michael Jackson talking or making songs anymore?
Well, it's not about Michael Jackson making songs. It's they couldn't get the ownership back from him. That's the problem.
Oh,
Look
okay, I see. So it wasn't about his message. It was about that he owned it.
didn't.
He had,
Yeah. Well, because they were trying to get this back from him, he started to make this message more and
I
more
see, I
prevalent.
see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, look, we saw the guy training for his Wembley O2 Stadium. He looked fine. Everything was perfect. What people forget is that his main lawyer shot himself in the head in his backyard. He was married to Catherine Bach, remember Daisy from Dukes of Hazzard?
Oh, okay.
Very successful lawyer. He blew his brains out, no note for no reason, just a few days before.
Do you
This
think he really
stinks.
killed himself?
That I don't know, but something was very, very wrong. And musicians, you know, he was very powerful. He was very, very powerful. So I think it behooved a lot of agendas. How that happens, it's easy. That's not that hard. You don't have to like, okay, Doc, go in and kill him. You know, just set up the right circumstances. No, it's not like in Amsterdam these days where you can have someone killed for 5,000 euros on a scooter, the crime-ridden country of the Netherlands. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's why from the onset, I'm the crackpot. I said, my show, I'm a crackpot. I'm a conspiracy therapist. Don't come for me. I'm a lost cause. That guy's just nuts. He's a crackpot. You don't need to kill him. I do tend to stay away from small aircraft from time to time.
Yeah, I think it's a much better approach to just go like full stupid. You know what I mean? Like, don't try to make everybody happy because then you do end up with your apology videos. You might as well just go, you know, just to the point where they're like, why would you even argue about Adam? The guy's like, if you can just end up in the Alex Jones nuts category, they don't even come after you because you're just like, they can't make sense of you anyway. You're just too out there.
Yeah, although I don't think
that out there. Actually, I agree with a lot of the stuff that you've said on your podcast that I've listened to.
Yeah. Again, our big secret is we're not actually. I'm doing the show more for John than anything. I want to make him laugh. I would love for us to be in the comedy category of podcasting. I just want to get a laugh out of him. He wants to get a laugh out of me, or a wow, crap, that's interesting. That's always been kind of the format of the show. Like, can I trump this guy with an even better clip that I found or something even more interesting? And now that we're doing that with thousands of producers, I mean, we're doing it for ourselves, but I'm not ever thinking of an audience. I'm thinking like, hey, that guy could send me some good information. It's a very different kind of vibe. It's not like I'm going out for the audience or anything like that.
You guys are a great team, and the show I like the pace of it. It's definitely different than, say, listening to the Rogan podcast, but I really like it, and you get a very good sampling of what's happening in the news too, like very quick clips. So I highly recommend everybody go over. If you don't already subscribe to No Agenda, you should definitely do that. Adam, thanks again. I know you're a busy guy. You got a huge following, everything. So for taking time out for the little people like me, really says a lot about you. So I really appreciate it.
First of all, you're not a little person. I hear the little persons over there in the room. I really appreciate it. I would ask everybody to try out a new podcast app. Go to newpodcastapps.com. And we're also doing video, and we will look forward to onboarding you into Podcasting 2.0 with your video so that we can also get you streaming value for value payments. I'd love to set you up with that. But awesome. If your audience can start trying a new podcast app, we'll at least get them started on that.
I'm actually really glad you brought that up because I had somebody reach out, and I've been trying to say, hey, you know, maybe not everybody who emails me is totally nuts. You know, there are probably some people who are sane and they want to actually help out. Why not take a risk? And so I had somebody recently say, hey, I want to just listen to audio. I don't want to either video. It's like a lot of data and I just want to download it on my phone and audio. And I was like, well, I don't really know what to do. So you actually say this at a perfect time because that was the next on my list. So thank you.
Yeah. We're thinking of you. Also live streaming. We want your podcast app to have a live stream element. We're doing
that would be awesome.
Comments so that you can use two completely different apps and comment on the same episode and you'll both see it. There's a lot of work to be done. And we've got, hundreds of developers and people who are testing and just smart people, content creators, who are in on this. And, the results. I think you'll like it when we get you into this with the streaming as well and the video. I think you'll see a lot of benefit, and you can't be kicked off. There's no kicking you off of podcasting 2.0.
Speaking my language. Okay, last question. This should be easy. Since we're trying to figure out where to move, we're based. I probably shouldn't say this, but we're basically done with Washington State. We like mountains, but we like freedom better. So where should we move? What if you could pick to live anywhere? Would you still live in Texas? Would you go somewhere else? What state do you? Because I'm a little nervous. The migration of people going, what's going to happen to Texas or what's going to happen in Nevada? Everybody's coming from Silicon Valley. Where should we move? What's the best state to live in right now?
Well, I've lived in a number of states. When I got to Texas 11 years ago, I immediately felt something I never really experienced, like, oh, this feels like home. I'm not quite sure how that worked. I'd never thought of it that way. After 10 years, we left Austin to re-enter the state of Texas. So we're now, 80 miles west in the hill country. It's a big difference in everything, in price, in community, in attitude. It's completely different. So I'd say anywhere but near a major city or metropolis is the way to go. And yeah, we do have options now. You are able to do that and live outside of the general city population because of connectivity.
Right.
So you are able to make those choices. I have friends who are moving to Montana, Wyoming. Although Wyoming could get overrun with douchebags, it's already kind of starting.
I think very cold in Wyoming in the
yes.
summertime.
Well, Texas is great because with the global cooling that's actually coming, it's going to be nice here. I mean, we had an interesting winter, so I don't know what they're talking about global warming, but anything could happen. Whatever the government says, I'll try and go the other way because that's usually what's correct.
Well, I fought my husband on Texas for a long time, but I think I've come around to it. So it's definitely on our short list. And actually,
what was the downside of Texas? Why did you fight him on Texas?
Because I really like mountains. And people are like, well, what about North Carolina?
Right.
And I'm like, those are foothills. Like where I like the Sierras, the North Cascades. Right. I like big mountains, 9,000 feet, right? That you're, or at least 5,000, 6,000 feet. And so, I'm really going to miss hiking mountains and skiing very close by. Cause I just love getting to a summit, and all you see are just mountain peaks for forever. It's just something so, just enervating about, just enlivening about being on a summit at that height. But, I also like the beach because I grew up in Florida. And so I don't love long winters. And Seattle sucked because it never got super cold, but it just went on forever. Winter starts in October. It goes until basically June. And it's just water torture for 8 months. So we're like, okay, so now we're in Eastern Washington,
right.
But now we're almost burning alive for 3 straight months. And so we're like, where, because Texas, you could at least drive to the beach, right? For a few hours.
That the problem, these fires is not global warming. I mean, it's because logging needs to be done. This is complete mismanagement of your state. You can also fight for your state and get Inslee the heck out of there and get some smart people in who know what they have to do.
I don't think that's ever going to happen because if Seattle is just going to always own Washington, I just don't know if it's not going to own it, or if you're not going to overthrow Seattle now, you're never going to overthrow Seattle. I mean, this or Olympia, this was the time for Washington State to be like, we're not going to let King County, Thurston County, they're not going to run the entire state. And they still did. They were supposed to start a separate state over here on this side of the Cascades, and it never happened. Actually, I didn't sign it, but I think my husband signed the petition, start Liberty State on this side of the Cascades. Where's Liberty State? We're still in Washington. So I just feel like if Seattle, and the ideology of Seattle was not overthrown during COVID, I don't have any hope for Washington.
Okay. Well, we live in Gillespie County, and there's only 26, maybe 30,000 people that live in this county. We have, I'm older now, right? So I'm ready for grandkids, and these stupid children won't hurry up. So it's going to be a dog before you know it. But I'm good with Star Hollow. You know, I'm good with living in the Gilmore Girls land. I really like it. And I've lived in I saw the San Francisco tech grow up. I lived there part-time, later full-time. I don't need to see that anymore. That's what Austin's becoming.
Yeah.
Austin is, everyone's moving in. I just don't want to hear about some guy SPAC while I'm, hanging out in
Have you
Joe's
heard
Diner.
Tim Dillon's rant about Austin? And by the way, you should definitely go on Tim Dillon's podcast if you haven't
If
yet.
I'm invited, I'd love to. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we should make that happen. All your producers should make that happen because I would love to see that. He's hilarious. Yeah, he has this whole rant about how Austin's just like people who could never make it in LA or New York and they just moved to Austin and it's just like the land of broken dreams. But, he's there because Rogan told him to move there, basically.
That's pretty funny.
It's funny.
I think there's an element of that, but it kind of turned into this. I mean, definitely the podcasting with Alex Jones, with myself, and now Austin's becoming a bit of a holistic healing center. People are moving here, so exactly. People are doing functional medicine. They're all setting up shop in Texas and around Austin. And Bitcoin, Bitcoin's very big here in Texas, Austin in particular.
Yeah, I was going to say ROKFIN, one of the platforms I'm on, which they said, hey, if you ever want to come on ROKFIN, consider it. But I know you don't do video. I don't know if they just do audio, but they're in Austin, so I think it is, and they are free-minded people, so not everybody. Moving.
Well, how do they make money?
Say that again.
How do they make money? ROKFIN.
Subscriptions. People pay $9.99 a month for a subscription, and then they get all the creators, which I think is a nice option versus like supporting each individual creator. I think people get tired of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's very hard to make that work for everybody, but I certainly wish them well. As long as if it's not advertising, I think it's probably a good idea.
No ads, just subscription.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to ask you any more questions because I do have to run my hydro.
You're going to miss your whole hydro appointment. I'm not letting you go. I'm just going to keep you talking all day long here.
I'm picturing that I'm just going to be like floating on, some ocean. I don't really know what this is.
I think it's like a waterboarding, honestly.
I was on a live podcast with Adam Curry. Like, what did you want me to do? Just dump out of it? So go swimming. But don't you think that with an audience-based model, you can also fall into the same trap because your audience starts to expect a certain thing out of you? You're this kind of guy. You talk about these kinds of things. And then all of a sudden you want to switch gears and they're like, screw you, Adam. I thought you were doing all these things. I'm unsubscribing. I'm out of here. I see it all the time in the comment section. I thought Allison was this kind of person. And then what is she? She's playing both sides. I'm like, wait a second. Maybe I'm just listening to different kinds of people. I'm not playing. So I think audiences sometimes they even though they say they like variety or they don't want bias or propaganda, I think we've been trained in some way to like want our little niche. And I wonder sometimes about independent podcasters giving their audience what they want because they're just as scared of their audience as they are of an advertiser. I'm
not afraid of my audience.
Well, you may not be, but like say somebody who's just starting out and 200 subscribers means a lot versus you.
That's because you're looking at the wrong numbers. You're looking at how many subscribers. I do not know how many people listen to the No Agenda show. We have no stats running. By happenstance, we were able to get kind of a count a few months ago. We think it's probably between 1 and 1.4 million people, but it doesn't matter because all we've ever cared about for 14 years is, can I pay my rent? Can I pay my mortgage? No. Yeah. Okay. So it's like OnlyFans. If you can get 1,000 people to send you $100 a year, you got $100,000 job. Except, again, they're producers, but they keep us honest. They keep us on track. They're the ones driving what they want to hear. They're the ones sending in expertise. Look, it's easy for me to sit here and go, well, this is an outrage. We left everybody in Afghanistan and the children and the girls. By the way, when that shit crops up, they're planning something. Oh, the poor girls. Oh, please. We didn't care about girls since Al-Shabaab. And we're going to do that again, too, in Somalia. But when then all of a sudden I have military men and women who are there, commenting, sending information, families back at home. Now you're talking. Now we're getting some information. We are just the routers, and we present it and we make it work for everybody, which it is a full-time job, of course, but nothing to be worried about. If we're doing it wrong, then they'll stop supporting us and we'll go broke. It's the easiest way. But that's all we've ever cared about. Can I pay my rent? That's it. That's the only number that really, and it's hard to make this click in people's heads because we think the ratings are important and the numbers. Well, half the numbers are bullcrap anyway. Yeah. YouTube counts after 5 seconds. Oh, there's a view. You know, who knows if those numbers are even true? I remember the Coney 2012 video that had 100 million views overnight.
Yeah.
Do you remember this Coney 2012? It was about getting the warlord who had children soldiers in Africa in the Congo.
Yeah,
and then that guy wound up going nuts, running around coked out or methed out on the top of cars naked. Do you remember all that?
I don't think I actually know. The coke part, I do not remember that part.
Or meth. Oh, it's fantastic. So overnight in 2012, this video got 100 to 200 million views. It was total propaganda, total horse crap. You can't trust any of that stuff.
Yeah.
You can't trust any of these numbers. So why even buy? And the best thing about my model, our model, no meetings.
Yeah.
No meetings with advertisers. True. No blowing the advertiser. Don't have to go out to dinner with the advertiser. None of that. None of that. Yeah. Now, if we get a knight or a dame coming through town, you better believe I'm going to take them out to dinner. And these are people who supported us with their own money directly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I love it. I've really learned a ton. I appreciate it, Adam. I'm blaming
time for your waterboarding.
Yeah, thank you. I'm telling my doctor it's your fault.
Please
All
do.
right. Well, I hope next time there's something fascinating to talk about that you'll come back on and I'm going to become one of your producers too, and I'll send you story ideas. I appreciate everything you guys are doing. So thanks again.
No, thank you, Allison. I really appreciate it. And congratulations on making a very big step that most people are too chicken shit to do. You did a really brave thing, and it's to be commended. It really is.
Well, I appreciate that, and I really appreciate the coaching at the end here because it is. I think it's easy to let your ego, as somebody said once to me on my show, ego is not your amigo, and it's easy to think like it's all those things that you just mentioned are not reality. But if you've done your sort of what do I want out of life? Well, what we want out of life is 20 acres. We want to be able to have our horses on the property. We'd like to be able to afford, half a cow every year and some vegetables. If that's it, that's what life's about, then I think I've succeeded. I think I've got enough followers. If it's about like driving a Ferrari or whatever else, which I've never wanted anyway. But when I first got out of college, I don't know if it was just like I was trained that way because my parents were kind of sort of aggressive professional doctors, and it was just like go big or go home. That's why I thought I needed to go work for a national news show because it was like the bigger the better. And I hated it. I really hated that model, and I like the community better. I also like it because it feels like the audience has more buy-in. And when you have a smaller community, it's like they're not just, I don't know, they're not just there to stick it to you or whatever. They feel like they're a part of it and that they have a role to play. And so it's nice because not just are they sending you ideas and stuff, but I don't know, it feels like more of a less of a business and more of a community, a group of people that are sharing ideas and learning from each other, not like this top-down model that I was in for so many years where it's like, I'm the expert and I'm telling you what's going on here and you're going to listen to me. And the only feedback is the money really that I make at the end of the month. I don't know. I found it to be far more fulfilling, actually, the smaller group. And again, like you said, if you evaluate what it is that your goals are, then you might actually be succeeding. Whereas you think you're still waiting to get a few more subscribers. Who cares? You already bought the quarter cow. You did it. You're in.
Participation and a feeling of ownership is incredibly important. That's why we give people titles on each show: executive producer, associate executive producer.
Nice.
We list those in the credits of the show itself. We have all a very well recognized credit and peerage system. People love that involvement, but also we have search engines. We have noagendameetups.com where people around the world organize and meet every single day almost. We have a plethora of artists who you'll notice that we have new album art for every single show, 2 a week. We have artists competing at No Agenda Art Generator. We didn't build any of this. None of this is built by, we have never hired anyone to build anything. The only thing is we pay for, again, Void Zero, Mark up in the north of Groningen in the Netherlands. He runs our infrastructure. We pay for the machines and the bandwidth and for some of his stuff, obviously, but everything else, we have No Agenda Shop. Some guys who make T-shirts, mugs, hoodies, hats, whatever. They said, hey, we'd love to make some t-shirts. Can we do a deal? I said, no, just don't use our faces. Everything else you can use. Pay the artists some money and donate whenever you make something. That's been going on for years. And I got really cool premiums. I never had a meeting with them. I don't care. There's no copyright. And they show up with $1,000 every month or so, just from whatever it is. It could be 1/10 of the sales. I don't care. So this system works. You just got to remember to pay your taxes. You got to do that. You got to keep good track, and you got to really be careful because when you got money coming in from all different places, the IRS gets nervous. But we figured that out years and years ago, and it's a very, very fulfilling system. And I've had lots and lots and lots and lots of money, and I spent it all on cool shit like castles and helicopters, and I've never been happier now. Right now, where I'm living in the hills, getting exactly what I deserve. We're fine. We if everything shut down for a year, we could continue to eat. Yeah. But I'm an old fart. It's like
I'm an old fart inside. Plus, I'm almost 40. I turned 40 in 2 weeks, so I'm basically done. Just hang me out.
Oh no. Wait until you hit 50. That's when it really gets cool. You are not done by a long shot. You'll have so much more energy in 10 years from now.
Well, I'm going to hold to that one. I hope so. My daughter will be 11, and she's my producer. My audience knows that. I call her my producer. She's a regular attendee.
How old is she now?
She's 15 months, and she's grown up listening to all kinds. What do you call yourself? A conspiracy therapist? She's had quite the education sitting in my office for live streams and whatnot. So
So she's walking around now.
She's walking. Yeah, running. She runs.
Oh yeah, so she's a terrorist basically.
Oh yeah, like she's definitely able to kill herself.
A true domestic terrorist in your own home. I know. Yeah. They're fantastic. They grow out of it, but it never ends.
No, she gets more and more fun, but also it gets scarier and scarier every day. And I feel like I need to get either more animals or do something in order to balance the so I'm not just like hyper focused on making sure that she's okay and all that stuff just because I don't want to turn her into a crazy person. As my husband says, like our whole goal is to keep her off of the pole. You know what I mean? So
and yes, I take Chris Rock's statement to heart, and I tell you, 7 years ago my daughter came to visit me and she had just taken up professional pole dancing, and I was like, I have failed as a father. Like athletic pole dancing, like competition, that's a real thing. Yeah. I felt like I'd fit. There she is. She's on the pole. I screwed it up. But you know what? With all the crazy talk that she's grown up with, and she's grown up with the weirdest people coming through the house, of all levels of life and stature. She is a very well-rounded, very smart, very level-headed human being because she was exposed to it and because she saw her parents. And we're not big academics. I dropped out of college within 3 months. Her mother never, barely finished high school, was a performer, a very good singer. So, she grew up in a kind of an artistic, free-flowing household with, dad's often with another business or something else, or Michael Jackson. But she grew up to be a normal kid because she was exposed to it, but none of the trappings, because I never fell for that.
So it's the modeling your behavior they're paying attention to, not necessarily just what you're saying. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. So don't be on too many iPads for her. When she sees you doing that, she wants to do that. Keep her off of that as long as possible.
I agree. I try not to look at my phone. I'm bad at it. I try not to look at my phone in front of her because she's already starting to associate like high level of importance with that object. I know it's the bright shiny screen and stuff too. But
the good point. You hear the ding. Mommy looks at that thing when it goes ding.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm brainwashed.
What is that? That must be something really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, man, I didn't even think about that. Didn't have any of this.
Yeah, I'm actually going to remind myself today. I'm going to be putting, I like listening to it in the background, but I do wonder sometimes, like I listen to content, like at what age does she start realizing this is adult content? And I'm now, because when they're like 6 months old, they're like, they don't really know what they're listening. So where's the age where it's like, they're picking up on that and they're going to start repeating it at the grocery store. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Okay. I really got to go, or my doctor's going to definitely drown me in the hydrotherapy, whatever it is that I'm about to do. So thanks again, Adam. I really appreciate it.
I'm going to click on the leave studio button so you can't ask any more questions. Thank you, Allison. It was a good time. Thanks everybody who was watching. Okay.
Yeah.